Negative thinking does not start with what happens around you. It starts with what you allow to happen within you. Long before a situation defeats you externally, it first tries to conquer you internally. The mind becomes the battlefield where fear, doubt, and worry attempt to take control. Many people blame their circumstances for their stress, their sadness, or their lack of progress, but the real struggle is not the problem itself. It is this perspective through which the problem is viewed. Two people can face the same storm, yet respond completely differently. One grows stronger, the other grows discouraged. The difference is not the storm, the difference is the thought process. Negative thinking magnifies problems until they appear larger than life. It convinces you that what you are facing is permanent, unstoppable, and personal. But the truth is, circumstances change, seasons shift, and challenges pass. Thoughts are what determine whether you rise or remain stuck. When negative thinking takes root, it begins to rewrite your story. It turns temporary setbacks into permanent identities. It tells you that failure defines you, that delays mean denial, and that obstacles are proof you are not chosen. Slowly, without realizing it, you begin to agree with those thoughts. And once you agree with them, they shape your decisions, your attitude, and your expectations. The mind is powerful. Whatever dominates your thoughts will eventually dominate your actions. If your mind is filled with fear, your steps will be hesitant. If your mind is filled with doubt, your vision will be limited. If your mind is filled with negativity, even blessings can feel like burdens. This is why controlling your thoughts is not optional, it is essential. Negative thinking often disguises itself as realism. It says, I'm just being honest, or I'm preparing for the worst, but preparation rooted in fear is not wisdom. It is bondage. These thoughts drain energy, weaken faith, and rob peace long before anything actually happens. They cause you to suffer twice, once in your mind and once in reality, if the situation even occurs. Breaking negative thinking begins with awareness. You must notice what you are telling yourself in quiet moments. The private conversations in your mind are shaping your public life. If you constantly rehearse defeat, disappointment, and despair internally, it becomes difficult to walk confidently externally. The mind will always try to move in the direction it has been trained to go. You were not created to be a victim of your thoughts. You were designed to lead them. Just because a thought enters your mind does not mean it deserves a seat in your heart. Thoughts are visitors, not residents. You have the power to challenge them, to replace them, and to refuse them. When you change the way you think, you change the way you respond. And when your response changes, your life begins to follow. You have more authority over your thoughts than you may realize. Thoughts will come, some invited, some unannounced, but not every thought deserves your agreement. The mind is constantly receiving messages from experiences, memories, emotions, and external voices, yet receiving a thought is not the same as accepting it. The moment you accept a thought, you give it power. The moment you challenge it, you weaken its influence. Many people believe they are powerless against negative thinking, but that belief itself is a lie that must be confronted. You are not a hostage to your mind. You can interrupt a thought pattern, question its truth, and redirect your focus. Just because a thought sounds familiar or feels strong does not mean it is accurate. Authority begins when you stop treating every thought as a fact and start treating some thoughts as intruders. Negative thoughts often attempt to disguise themselves as your own voice. They speak in first person, saying, I can't, I'll never, or I always fail. Over time, repetition makes these thoughts feel personal and permanent, but repetition does not equal truth. A lie repeated often enough may feel real, but it remains a lie. Your authority is activated when you refuse to agree with thoughts that contradict peace, hope, and purpose. Taking authority over your thoughts requires intentional effort. It is not passive, it is a daily discipline. You must decide what is allowed to remain in your mind and what must be removed. If a thought weakens your faith, steals your joy, or paralyzes your progress, it does not belong. Allowing destructive thoughts to linger is like leaving a door open for something that was never meant to enter. Your thoughts influence your emotions, and your emotions influence your behavior. When negative thinking goes unchecked, it slowly shapes how you see yourself and the world around you. You begin to react out of fear instead of faith, doubt instead of confidence. But when you step into your authority, you regain control over your responses. You may not control what happens to you, but you can control how you think about what happens to you. Authority over the mind does not mean you never experience negative thoughts. It means you do not surrender to them. You acknowledge the thought, examine it, and decide whether it aligns with truth. If it does not, you let it go. This practice builds mental strength over time. Each time you reject a destructive thought, you reinforce a healthier way of thinking. You were created to lead your thoughts, not be led by them. The mind follows direction when given clear instruction. When you consistently choose clarity over confusion and truth over fear, your thinking begins to shift. Peace becomes more familiar, confidence grows stronger, and slowly the thoughts that once controlled you lose their authority because you reclaimed what was always Morning yours. Prayer is more than a spiritual routine. It is a deliberate reset for the mind and the soul. Before the pressures of the day compete for attention, prayer creates a quiet space where clarity can return. In those early moments when the mind is most impressionable, what you focus on sets the emotional and mental direction for everything that follows. When prayer becomes the first voice you listen to, it becomes the strongest influence shaping your thoughts. The mind often wakes up carrying unfinished thoughts from yesterday. Worries, regrets, and unresolved issues try to resume where they left off. Morning prayer interrupts that cycle. It does not deny reality, but it reframes it. Instead of allowing yesterday's burdens to dictate today's outlook, prayer centers the mind on peace, trust, and purpose. It shifts attention away from what went wrong and toward what is still possible. Prayer in the morning has the power to slow the racing mind. Anxiety thrives in haste and uncertainty, but prayer invites stillness. In that stillness, the mind begins to release tension it has been holding on to unconsciously. Breathing becomes deeper, thoughts become clearer, emotional weight starts to lift. This is not escape, it is preparation. A calm mind is better equipped to face challenges without being overwhelmed by them. When you pray in the morning, you are choosing alignment over distraction. Instead of reacting impulsively to the demands of the day, prayer allows you to respond thoughtfully. It creates a mental filter through which situations are processed. Problems no longer feel as threatening, and decisions become less emotionally driven. This mental clarity is one of the greatest gifts of consistent morning prayer. Morning prayer also strengthens inner resilience. It reminds the mind that it is not facing the day alone. That awareness produces confidence and steadiness, even when circumstances are uncertain. When pressure arises later in the day, the mind can return to the calm established in prayer. That early grounding becomes an anchor, preventing emotional drift when stress attempts to take control. Repetition plays an important role in this reset. Each morning spent in prayer gradually retrains the mind. Over time, the mind begins to expect peace instead of chaos, faith instead of fear. This is how transformation happens, not through sudden change, but through consistent practice. Morning prayer rewires thought patterns, replacing habitual worry with trust and expectation. A reset does not mean the day will be free of challenges. It means the mind is prepared to handle them. When prayer leads the morning, reactions become measured instead of frantic. Confidence replaces hesitation. Hope replaces heaviness. The mind learns to start each day from a place of strength rather than stress. And as this pattern continues, the impact reaches beyond mornings, shaping the entire rhythm of life. Fear has a way of presenting itself as protection, but in reality, it often becomes a prison. It convinces the mind that avoiding risk is the same as being safe, when in truth, it slowly shrinks potential and limits growth. Fear speaks in extremes, always pointing to the worst case scenario, always magnifying uncertainty until it feels unbearable. When fear is allowed to dominate thinking, it distorts perception and makes challenges appear larger than they truly are. Faith works in the opposite direction. It does not deny the existence of difficulty, but it refuses to give difficulty the final word. Faith creates room for possibility where fear sees only limitation. It shifts focus away from what could go wrong and toward what could be restored, strengthened, or transformed. This shift is not emotional optimism. It is a deliberate choice to trust beyond immediate understanding. Replacing fear with faith begins with recognizing how fear operates. Fear feeds on repetition. The more a fearful thought is rehearsed, the stronger it becomes. Over time, fear can feel logical, even reasonable, but logic built on fear produces paralysis. Faith interrupts this pattern by introducing a different narrative, one that emphasizes hope, purpose, and resilience rather than threat. When faith takes the place of fear, inner peace begins to emerge. Peace does not mean the absence of problems. It means the presence of confidence in the midst of them. The mind becomes less reactive and more steady. Situations that once caused panic now invite patience. Decisions that were once delayed by doubt can be approached with clarity and calm. Fear demands control. It wants certainty before action. Faith, however, allows movement even when certainty is incomplete. This does not mean acting recklessly. It means trusting that growth often requires steps forward without full visibility. When fear is released, The mind becomes flexible rather than rigid, open rather than defensive. The replacement of fear with faith also affects how you interpret setbacks. Fear interprets obstacles as signs of failure or warning to retreat. Faith interprets them as opportunities for learning and refinement. This change in interpretation preserves emotional energy and prevents discouragement from settling in. The mind stays forward, focused instead of stuck in self-protection mode. Over time, faith reshapes identity. Instead of seeing yourself as fragile or vulnerable, you begin to see yourself as capable and resilient. This internal shift changes how you show up in relationships, responsibilities, and challenges. Confidence grows not from the absence of fear, but from the decision not to be ruled by it. Fear narrows vision, but faith expands it. Fear isolates, but faith exhausts, but faith restores. As faith replaces fear, the mind experiences a new level of freedom. Thought patterns become healthier. Emotional responses become steadier, and life begins to move from survival to purpose-driven living, one faithful thought at a time. The past has a powerful way of trying to speak into the present. Memories of failure, regret, and disappointment often return uninvited, reminding the mind of moments it wishes it could forget. When past pain is left unresolved, it quietly influences how today is approached. It creates hesitation where there should be confidence and fear where there should be expectation. The weight of yesterday can easily steal the strength needed for today. Holding on to past pain feels familiar even when it is harmful. The mind replays old experiences, attempting to find meaning or closure, but instead it often reopens wounds. Each replay reinforces the emotional impact of what happened, keeping the pain active instead of allowing it to heal. Over time, this habit drains energy and narrows vision, making it difficult to fully engage with present opportunities. Letting go does not mean denying what happened or pretending it did not matter. Pain leaves marks, and those marks shape understanding, but carrying pain forward as a constant companion prevents growth. When the past becomes the primary reference point, the present is always compared, measured, and judged through old experiences. This comparison robs today of its uniqueness and potential. Unresolved pain also distorts self-perception. Mistakes from the past can become labels in the mind, defining identity instead of informing growth. Failure turns into a personal verdict rather than a temporary moment. This internal narrative limits belief in what is possible. It becomes difficult to imagine success when the mind is still living in past disappointment. Releasing past pain is an act of strength, not weakness. It requires acknowledging the hurt without allowing it to dictate the future. When the mind stops rehearsing what went wrong, it creates space for what can go right. Emotional energy that was tied to regret becomes available for creativity, focus, and progress. The present moment becomes lighter, more flexible, and more hopeful. The past cannot be changed, but its influence can be reduced. When pain is processed rather than suppressed, it loses its control. Reflection becomes wisdom instead of self-punishment. Lessons are extracted without reliving the emotional weight. This shift transforms pain into perspective rather than a prison. Living fully in today requires freedom from yesterday's grip. Each day carries its own purpose, challenges, and possibilities. When the mind is no longer anchored to what was lost or broken, it becomes open to what can still be built. Confidence grows when attention is placed on current effort instead of past failure. Letting go of past pain restores focus and presence. It allows the mind to respond to today's needs rather than yesterday's wounds. Growth becomes possible when the past is honored as part of the journey, but no longer